Okay, guys, we're on to chapter 8, which is Uncle Cor. After confession on Saturdays came bath time. Then we are clean inside and outside for Sunday, Mother always said. In the old days, there had been a tub of clean water for everyone, but it took fuel to heat water, so now they just took turns going in first. There was no soap, only a scrubbing brush and scouring powder which scratched the skin. When they were all washed and they put on clean clothes, they sat in the living room drinking hot skim milk and discussing the possibilities of Charles' escape. Mother was making a winter coat for Trixie out of an olive green plush tablecloth. She said the color would go very well with Trixie's curls. She had to hurry because it was getting dark. There was no oil for lamps anymore, and even candles were scarce. Presently, she put her work aside. Her eyes were beginning to ache. She shut the blackout curtains and lit a nightlight, which she put on the table. Trixie was already in bed. Freya began to bark, and a little later there was a knock at the door. They all stiffened with fear. Who could that be? It was after curfew. Schneiderhans again? Father got up slowly and opened the door. Cor! He cried joyously. Come in, man! You're most welcome. Take off your wet coat, Rika. It's your brother. That was a happy reunion. Mother immediately bustled about, opening some preserved meat and vegetables, which she kept for just such a special occasion, and lighting candles. The children hugged themselves. They hadn't known in the morning that the dreary, rain-washed day would hold such a treat. The room seemed suddenly full of warmth and festivity. And with Uncle Cor, too, had come contact with the great world beyond where the war was being waged. Uncle Cor was a handsome man. He had Mother's deep blue eyes with her twinkle. His brows were finely penciled like Mother's, and he had the same thick, curly blonde hair. There were scars on his cheeks, which he would not explain. When Joris kept asking, he said, "Oh, I fell asleep in a zoo, and an eagle sat on me." Mother kept looking at him in a gloating way. Uncle Cor told her that he had to give up his garage in Leyden because there was no gasoline to be got. The Germans wanted him to work in Berlin, so he had to go into hiding, or dive under, as it was called. Is that all you're doing then? Just hiding? Asked Mother, a little disappointed. Sure. What else would I be doing? Asked Uncle Cor, gave a huge wink to Joris and Dirk Jan, and they nudged each other. Uncle Cor was in the underground, of course, like Raina. Uncle Cor joked and laughed and told stories of the underground. Do you know Keys Kip? Asked Joris suddenly. Uncle Cor threw Joris a questioning look. You know, the underground man who raided the police headquarters in Amsterdam, explained Joris. Yes, I suppose I do, Uncle Cor admitted slowly. What's he like? Asked Joris and Dirk Jan together. We don't discuss our leaders, said Uncle Cor. But he's very famous, isn't he? Asked Dirk Jan. Oh, I wouldn't say that, answered Uncle Cor. He has done no more than any of the others. What work do you do? Asked Dirk Jan and blushed. He realized he was asking too much, but Uncle Cor answered quite simply. I help to find hiding places for underdivers and organize ways of getting Allied soldiers and airmen across the border. Oh! Joris and Dirk Jan were upon him like a whirlwind. Then you can help Charles! They told him about the aviator, and Uncle Cor was gratifyingly impressed. Well done, he said. That is important work. We must certainly get Charles out of the country. But if Leendert Schneiderhans is looking for him, no time must be lost. We should go over right away while it's dark and bring him here. That mill is an obvious place for the Schneiderhans to look. Charles has a gun, said Joris, and he has a hiding place in the attic under a heap of old sails. Yes, but it isn't safe there. He is better off here, especially as Schneiderhans has already been here. Besides, we need all sorts of things to dress him up. Father and Mother realized that Uncle Cor was right. What should we do then? Fetch him in the boat? Asked Father. That might be a good idea. We could hide him in his uniform under a coat. So it was decided. Father couldn't leave because the mill was working, so the boys would go with Uncle Cor to fetch Charles. Uncle Cor and Dirk Jan would row him home. Joris would stay behind to clean up and remove any traces of the aviator. But it's dark, said Joris. I have a flashlight, said Uncle Cor. Be careful with it, though. Don't let it shine through the windows. Wouldn't it be better if Dirk Jan stayed behind? Asked Mother anxiously. No, he'll have to row, said Uncle Cor. I'm not an expert with the oars, and we have to go as quickly and as quietly as possible. Besides, Joris is only a child. If he is caught, the Germans probably won't shoot him. Shoot him? Mother's eyes widened with horror. Well, that's the sort of thing we're risking. Helping Charles. Don't you realize that? Uncle Cor said impatiently. Mother fell silent. She had realized it as a remote possibility, not as a solid fact. Her brother saw people being punished for this work every day, of course. For him, these dangers were as actual as the flower pots on the windowsill. I see, she sighed, but can't Joris come with you in the boat? Her youngest boy was still a baby to her. Look, said Uncle Cor, you must trust me. I know what I'm doing. It's essential that we are quick about removing Charles and slow about leaving no clues. I've seen tragedies resulting from a little oversight when we were in a hurry. What's the matter, Mother? Joris asked. I made that trip alone twice last night. Yes, but I didn't know about it, muttered Mother, but she gave up. It was wonderful to have Uncle Cor. He knew exactly what to do. They all put on dark clothes and took Father's overcoat to cover Charles' uniform. Mother said she'd make up beds for Uncle Cor and Charles in the attic. It was a much more frightening journey this time than it had been before. There was no moon, only the wind and rain, and they knew Schneiderhans was on the prowl, looking for the missing aviator. Dirk Jan was a skillful rower. They glided swiftly and silently along the canal to the old mill. Joris and Dirk Jan fetched Charles. They explained what was happening and gave him Father's coat to put on. Then Dirk Jan and Charles hurried to the boat. Joris stayed behind, watching the boat disappear into the night. He returned to the mill, where he moved his flashlight around, shading it with his hands. The cat wound herself around his ankles, mewing. It was comforting not to be alone. Ah, there he had found something, a piece of the aviator's map with English lettering on it. If the Germans had seen that. He also found a brass button and put both in his pocket. He searched everywhere but found nothing else. As he went out, he carefully shut the door. Joris's thin coat was drenched. The flashlight in his pocket bumped against his thigh as he walked. Squelch, 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 squelch went his clogs. Rain trickled down his nose. He was thinking only of the misery of wetness when a voice sounded suddenly behind him. Halt! Who is there? Who is out after curfew? Leendert Schneiderhans. Joris didn't think twice. He kicked his clogs into the bushes and ran. Schneiderhans could not see well enough to shoot, so he began to run too, and saw that they were going in the direction of the Watchman. He also saw that it was only a boy he was pursuing, not a man. One of the Verhagen kids, I suppose. He muttered, wait till I catch him. The thought gave extra energy to his legs. Joris was running as fast as his lungs would let him, and thinking furiously. He must not let Schneiderhans find out who he was. He had to go home, and yet Leendert must not see him go in. If he was captured, all was up. With the piece of aviator's map in his pocket. The Watchman, the Watchman. Joris looked at it in despair. Winged Watchman, guardian angel. His breath came in wheezing gasps. He heard Schneiderhan's footsteps coming closer. Soon he would not be able to run any more. There was a stitch in his side. Let me see if I can pull up the picture really quick for you. I should have had it ready. 1 second and you will see it. Okay. Well, it won't click on it. So maybe I can zoom in on it for you guys. Okay, give it a minute to adjust. So there's the Winged Watchman that he's trying to get to. That's the rain falling too, it's supposed to be. So he has a stitch in his side. He's having a hard time. Then he saw he was near the moving wings of the mill, dark and vague but unmistakable. He grabbed one of them and jumped on it, melting into the shadow. He had to move fast to keep his head up as the wing carried him higher and higher, far out of the reach of his pursuer. Joris felt a momentary exhilaration, but he hadn't time to think about it. He had to keep changing his position. A wrong move might send him plummeting to the ground with a broken neck. But that danger seemed nothing compared to the thought of Schneiderhans. He had to hold tight to the slippery wet gates as he moved, for he felt the gusts of wind tugging at him, slapping the rain against his ears. Slowly the wing was going down, down, down again. Schneiderhans was no longer there. He had gone around the mill to the other side. Joris let go and stood for a moment, feeling the earth turn around him. Then he flattened himself against the wall and inched his way to the door behind the moving wings. He felt them whistling past him, narrowly missing him, but he was able to reach the door, lift the latch, and slip inside into the safety of his home. He rushed into the living room where Mother, Father Charles, and Uncle Cor were chatting. Dirk Jan had already gone to bed. Schneiderhans, he gasped. Freya started to bark. At the same moment, Uncle Cor and Charles sneaked upstairs, and Mother helped strip Joris out of his clothes, drying his hair with her apron. Then he climbed over Dirk Jan, jumped naked under the covers. Mother hurried to the kitchen with his wet clothes. All of this took less time than when Father opened the door to Schneiderhans. All evidence of Joris's entry had vanished. I have to report on one of your boys. He is out after curfew, Schneiderhans growled. That's impossible, Father answered. Both boys are peaceably in bed. I don't believe it, insisted Schneiderhans. I've just been chasing one all over the place. You must be mistaken, said Father. See for yourself, but be quiet. Don't wake them. He led the way into the living room. Joris lay motionless against the wall, his eyes closed. Beside him, Dirk Jan was snoring convincingly. Leendert stared. He put out his hand and felt Dirk Jan's hair. It was dry. I could have sworn, he said. It's dark, explained Father. One little rascal looks just as much like another. You'd better find out who it was. Boys have no business being out at this time. Schneiderhans was thinking hard. He knew there'd been no time for the boy to have gone around the mill ahead of him and gotten into bed all dry. No, he had just vanished. In the ditch, perhaps? Was he outside now, mocking Leendert? With a muffled curse, Leendert rushed out of the mill, leaving Father to shut the door and bolted. Father said. It had taken courage to invite Leendert into the house with the two underdivers in the attic, but apparently it had disarmed Leendert's suspicions. Joris lay shaking and shivering in bed. When he thought of the dangers he had escaped, his teeth chattered. Presently, he heard his father and mother come into the room and Uncle Cor with them. What happened? They asked. Dirk Jan was sitting up now. He'd been awake the whole time. Joris sat up too, and Mother wrapped a blanket around his shoulders. Joris told the story from the very beginning. He made it sound funny. When he came to the part where he got on the mill wing, Mother grabbed Father in a fright. And when she heard how Joris had squeezed past the wing into the north door, Mother clucked her tongue and went to fetch hot milk for him. She fussed about him like a worried mother hen. Uncle Cor looked at Joris with an admiring glint in his eyes. He'll do, he remarked before going upstairs. Boy, you must have been scared, said Dirk Jan admiringly. Mother tucked them in. Now, go to sleep, she said, blowing out the candles. Father was the last to say goodnight. My plucky boy, he murmured, putting his hand on Joris's damp head. Joris went to sleep happily. And that, my dears, is the end of Uncle Cor Comes to Visit, Chapter 8, or Uncle Cor. So that's the end of Chapter 8. Next time we have Chapter 9, which is called Tilly. So until next time, my sweets, I will see you later.